Hello, everyone. My name is Mark from the Misplay Podcast, and you're listening to Eternal Journey, everyone's favorite Eternal podcast.
Welcome to Eternal Journey, the podcast.
Greetings, all my knights and padawans out there. I am Jedi, and you are listening to Eternal Journey, the podcast that talks about all things eternal with a focus on limited play. It's episode 58, and today we're going to be discussing how to improve your game. That's right. Everyone always likes to play as optimal as they can, but sometimes we aren't able to, and so we're going to help you out by giving you some tips and tricks on what we use to improve our game and hopefully get yours to that next level. But first things first, I'm joined on the line by two of my really good friends coming from California. We have Alex. What is up, Darth Herman 2? I did that backwards.
What's up, gentlemen? How's it going?
Good, man. Good. Still cracking out school and work, but thankfully. But everything overall going good, and got out of my limited slump. Actually got a couple of wins, including one with a goblin draft of all things. But thank God that is over with. Phew.
That was a heck of a finish to those goblin drafts. Way to go.
Thanks, man. No kidding.
Got the only 7 win in the tourney.
Yeah, I mean, that deck was kind of busted, though. We got really fortunate with our shinies. Like, 2 of our shinies that saved us from bad rares were on-color tokens. So
can't complain about that.
Yeah, no joke, no joke. And plus that last one, you guys were on stream with me for that last deck was just weird, dude. We shouldn't have won like half of those games.
Yeah, it was kind of weird.
Form bend for the win, you know what I'm saying?
I've never seen Form Bend do so much work.
Yeah, you'll probably never see in a deck again either.
True.
But
true story.
That great soothing voice you guys are listening to is coming from, I don't even know, cold-ish Colorado, and that is Johnholio.
Yo, how you guys doing?
How are you doing, man? You got a new first-person shooter you've been rocking lately.
Yeah, I'm a Battle Royale fanatic, and yeah, there's a new one I'm playing right now, the Call of Duty game, so still finding some time for Eternal, but yeah, I'm a little addicted.
So did that one finally dethrone PUBG, or?
Not really. It's I play on console, so I've been complaining about not finding servers for weeks, and now that this game's competing too, like, good luck.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, no, I still prefer the gameplay, honestly, of PUBG, but what can you do?
Yeah, fair. I've been the only one I played Apex Legends for about a week, and then realized I was getting smashed and just stopped. But
I like that one too. I mean, it's somewhere in the middle of these two, probably.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a streamer, and that was the hot game, and it was free, so I was like, let me try it. But I was like, yeah, I don't have the speed anymore to keep up with these youngins.
Yeah, somehow I still got it, despite my age.
Fair. All right, speaking of streaming, you can catch the 3 of us live at twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ, where, man, we need to do more group drafts on there. I'm going to do it. I'm going to pull the trigger.
You ain't wrong.
I'm going to pull the trigger, man. Our fans have been so good. I'm going to go ahead and upgrade our Discord to Nitro. And then...
oh, cool. So, speaking of co-op drafts and whatever, I know some people were talking in your chat the other day about redeeming that, with the midichlorians. So hopefully we get some of the order participating in that as well.
Sweet. Ooh, that'd be exciting. Nice. Yeah. So every Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, come hang out with us. I think I got the full thing. If not, it was Jedi EJ on Twitch. And then if you are not able to catch us live, you can always check out the content on YouTube, Eternal Journey. That's right, where you can also be watching this podcast if you are a very visual person. I have all of the scenarios and pack ones and any cards we talk about on the screen for you to enjoy, as well as draft videos, sealed videos, constructed stuff. I do some tournament reports on there, as well as a new series that people are enjoying, my top 5s. So definitely check that out. This leads us into our shout-out section. So I want to welcome to the Jedi Order some great supporters, of course, Extinction, Chastity Weaver, rocking out the gift subs and the bits. Thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate that. And then some new members of the Jedi Order. We have Titus and Blossom, Pachi, LOTR, Sammy91. So do you guys think it's Lord of the Rings? Pachi Lord of the Rings? Or do you think it's something else?
I can only assume so.
Okay. Okay.
Well,
All right. I was just wondering if there was some other one that I didn't miss, like Knights of the Old Republic. Wait,
That's KOTOR.
Yeah, that's KOTOR. That's right. I know. I just wanted to double check. I was like, wait, there's other things.
That's it. That's all I can think of.
All right. Sammy91, which was our guest on our show last week. A rank 31. Gumby Man 2531. This is new to limited, which is exciting. Sakarnan, Cal Shadowstep, and Sigma Tank. Welcome each and every one of you to the Jedi Order. Really appreciate it. You guys are fantastic and you rock. So with all that out of the way, it leads us to our pack one, pick one. Alex, you ready to crack a pack, buddy?
yeah, let's do it.
All right, well then you're gonna have to wait because I'm picking John first. John, we have turn back time, three in time, slow spell. Draw a card from your void, any card at all. Pick a card. It gets void bound. Token of Metis, which is typically the dragon-ish faction. Depleted power you can pick from Fire, Primal Shadow. Felrock's Infiltrator, the 1/1. For 3 Shadow. It's an unseen. It has deadly, unblockable, and then mastery 5. Draw one of the top 5 cards of the enemy player's deck. They discard the rest. And Burning Core Drake, the 3/1 Nightmare Dragon at common for 3 Fire. Flying, Reckless, and Mastery 9er. Create and draw 3 treasure troves. John, any of these standing out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I like turn back time quite a bit, but I really don't want to first pick that. I think, I'd rather first pick a playable unit or spell of some kind. So for this first row, I think I'd probably go with the Drake.
Oh, wow. All right. Bold.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like turn back time is like the safest pick, right? Because you're literally just copying a card that you're going to get later.
Yes and no. I mean, these things just keep coming around, though, is the thing.
Yeah, you are right. I find myself cutting at least one from a deck most of the time when I am in time. Fair.
That's the only reason, really.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Second row of commons. We have Ensnare. Kill an attacking enemy unit with flying at fast speed for 1 green, 1 justice. Calibrate 1 time. Draw slow spell. Draw a relic or power card from the top 5. I don't know why I said I was going to say 12. Top 5 cards of your deck. Put the rest on the bottom. Humbug Nest. Fast spell. 3 time. Play 2 1/1 humbugs with flying. And Sky King Storyteller. The handcuffing Oni at 3 and a justice. It's a 2/3. It has Warcry and then Mastery 6. Put an 8/8 Sword of the Sky King into your deck. Alex, any of these take out Turn Back Time or Burning Core Drake for you?
I mean, maybe the Humbug Nest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I like that over the other two, honestly.
Yeah, Humbug Nest is like, it still has the double influence issue, but it 1/2 for one's a Burning Core Drake, and it has other synergies and things like that. I think I'd rather first pick that between that and the Drake.
Yeah, I'm with you. Then the fast speed's always nice, right? It turns up being a little more flexible than you think. All right, takes us into our uncommons. We have Majestic Skies, the 2 Elysian relic. Your units with flying have +1/+1. Ultimate, pay 6 to draw a unit with flying of your choice from your deck. Nahid's Distillation. 6 time slow spell, draw 3 cards, but you may exhaust a unit to play Nahid's Distillation for 2 less, i.e. 4. And Water Conjuring. 3 primal, fast spell, stun 2 enemy units, decimate, Winvoke, primal. Back to you, John. We have some heavy hitters here.
Nice uncommons. I think Distillation just gets the nod here just because it's first pick, and that's going to go in literally any deck. At the end of the day, even as just a single time card splash. These other two really lock in some heavier requirements and Water Conjuring is almost maybe equal. if not equal, or I mean sometimes better. But as a pack one, pick one. I think it's Distillation for me here.
Yeah, it's really crazy because you're right. Like all three of these cards are extremely powerful, and Water Conjuring, yeah, Windvoke is it's something you coined, and I've started to use it too. It's just true. You can, without, more often than not, you get a rare legendary that just ends up winning the game for you. So that's extremely powerful. And so let me ask you this, Alex. On Majestic Skies, right? This is a build around, right? If you have the flyers, this card is super busted. And if you don't, it's not as great. So is this the kind of card that you want to see early on so you could start to build your deck around it? Or is it something where you rather already be an Elysian and then see it kind of as a payoff mid to late pack?
The latter option. I don't really want to go into that as a first pick. Really, I like to stay more open than that, so I don't think I would steer that way. I want to.
I'm pretty open to the possibility myself, but
yeah, I know it's tough. Like I normally side with Alex, where I rather see it kind of as a payoff, where that I know that lane is kind of already open. I'm like, oh yeah, sweet, this just confirms it. But there's something to be said about taking a card early, and then you can kind of prioritize things like Humbug Nest and other medium flyers. Right. Obviously we're not sitting at a table, so it's not like you could send signals to the person and hopefully get them in pack 2 and 3. Like that's not gonna happen. But there's still times where it just falls in your favor, and that card is just so powerful that it could be a consideration. And we've talked about it plenty of times on the show where we're okay kind of giving up our first pick because it's the least informed or educated guess of the of all the packs. But I think the fact that it's up against two other very powerful cards that just go in a lot more decks, I think you're right. I think here Majestic Skies is kind of a third place because it's very powerful, but it's the most narrow out of the three.
Like I'm okay with not getting married to my first pick, but I want to get married to my first pick. Like I want it to be good, so I'd rather stay open and pick a card that will be good in more decks, like the Distillation.
Yeah.
But that is a very powerful card in the sense that it's like if you have mostly flyers, it's like a Horn of Plenty for 2 for your deck.
Yeah, and it lets you pull a card later.
I'm like, and it's staying in the right deck for sure.
Plus, I mean, let's be honest, like Thunderstrike Drake is in packs 2 and 3. So being able to tutor up 2, 5, 6 flyers is pretty huge. I mean, granted, like that's Magical Christmas Land, but it's also not unheard of either. So,
I mean, if you first pick a Majestic Skies, I mean, you might come out of pack 1 with like 5 copies of Humbug Nest, know, which you definitely wouldn't otherwise.
True story.
That'd be a fun draft.
Yep. And it's really interesting too, because I found myself, maybe not in the newer format because splashing is a little bit tougher, but I found myself very easily splashing 1 or 2 Biting Winds in my decks, right? And so Water Conjuring always looks so tempting because it's like, well, shoot, man, you're only 1 influence away from, but you really want to be primal, at least at the very least your tertiary color and in your 3 faction. You know what I mean? Like you can't just splash a Water Conjuring.
At least with Water Conjuring though, you're not gonna, like, despite the invoke, you're still not normally gonna be doing the fast stun on curve anyway, right? So this is more of a 7 drop or whatever, if you want to think of it like that anyway. And so it is like slightly more splashable because of that. But I mean, compare it to like the Justice Conjuring, like as a combat trick, you're gonna be wanting access to that much earlier in the game in general. So just something to consider.
Yeah, good point. All right, so let's see if I could sway you guys away from Nahid's Distillation with our rare. This one is a doozy. It sees this constructed play, and it seems to be decent in limited play, even though not the bomb that is in constructed. We have Master's Blade. This is the +1/+1 weapon for 3 justice, correction. And +1/+1 for each of the wielder's battle skills. Spellcraft 1, so 4 total. Play Fall Short. Fall Short is a fastball, which of course doesn't matter here, where it kills a unit that has no battle skills. Mastery 7, Windvoke Justice. So let's go back to you, Alex. Where are you at on Master's Blade? Do you think that's enough to take out Nahid's Distillation?
It's really close, man. This is a good pack. It's like a good discussion. I don't think so, because and like unless you're getting more than the +1/+1, like if you're in a deck where you know you're gonna have some battle skills, like maybe the unseen deck, I guess, which isn't really even a deck. And then Justice, not really looking to start in Justice, so I still think I would take Nahid's Distillation here. But that's just me.
Okay. Where are you at on fall short in the format? Because I mean, it can't, I mean, point blank, it's a removal spell, albeit very restrictive. So where does fall short on its own fall in the format for you?
Like, I don't mind fall short. I think that's okay. I haven't drafted too many of them, but it's a serviceable removal spell. It's just kind of awkward if you need the weapon and there's no targets for the fall short, and it's like, what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of an awkward card, you know?
Yeah. Okay, I could see that. And then obviously it's got the Mastery 7, but in a limited format, you're talking about cards. Maybe if you get lucky, it might have 2 battle skills, right? One, something has Exalted and like Warcry or something like that, or Corrupt. So actually, I don't know if Corrupt counts as a battle skill now. I don't think it does.
It does not.
It does not. Yeah, that's what I thought. So it's going to be, so getting that Mastery is a little tougher as well. And that's why this card's seeing more play in Constructor, where you can put it on an Unseen with 3 or 4 battle skills. I don't know. How about you, John? Where are you at on Master's Blade?
Alex is correct in that it's very close. I actually need 2 more of these for Constructed, so just by default, I think I'd pick it here because of that.
Yeah, that's 100% respectable. 100%.
Yeah, it is really close, and I have seen this card really mess some people up in draft, and you might be surprised. Like look at this other card, 2 other cards in this pack, right? Like Falrock's Infiltrator, Burning Core Drake. Think about those as targets for Master's Blade. Like, those are very good, and those will both get that mastery like very quick. And there's a surprising number of targets for Fall Short. Some are not that impactful, but it only costs 1 more for the spellcraft. Like, you're gonna snap that off most times you play this card. It's gonna have a target.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind are all the strangers, both the fixing ones as well as the actual rare ones. Because even though they have a block of text, none of it is a battle skill.
I think only one of the rare strangers has one. Like, I think it's the 2/4 Skycrag one, because it says like strangers have Berserk or something, or it has Berserk, I forget. But none of the other ones have a battle skill. So I don't know. And then the mastery payoff is huge. Like Windvoking for Justice, yes please. It almost always seems to get the opponent a Wind Conjuring, which is another invoke, so it just kind of chains them in, like, yeah.
After the weapon's already +7/+7 at that point, it's just...
I've also seen people literally just, I mean, if you just slap this on a big 7/7 or something, like, boom, you just masteried for, the first time you swing.
Yeah, and it
even
replaces
care
itself.
that it only gave it +1/+1. Yeah, it already just replaced itself and killed something. So it's like... it's like a 3-for-1 there, because the stat buffs is permanent-ish, right? Like, I think this card's often quite good. I'd probably first pick it here, honestly.
Okay, yeah, and plus it's single Justice, so it's easy to splash as well. And like you said, I mean, it rare. I mean, yeah, if you have something like a Falrock Infiltrator or Burning Core Drake, something that can really maximize having it on early, you'll play it early. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with playing it late too, especially if your opponent stumbles. Right, you have something that will give this thing a plus. This thing gives them a +3/+3. That's pretty strong.
Right.
Sweet.
What about you, Jedi? What are you thinking here?
I'm not gonna lie. I took the Nahid's Distillation.
That's fair.
Yeah. To reference outside the bigger picture, like you did, I had already crafted 4 of them, or well, whatever I needed. I think I crafted like 2 of them for my unseen deck, so I didn't need it. And then honestly, I feel like the Nahid's Distillation has been going around so few and far between, and I got tired of it always being played against me never playing one, that I just ended up taking it. Plus, I like being Time. Justice is a close second, but let's be honest, Time is the strongest faction in this format. So if you go Justice, right, you're opening up the door to Purpose, which is useless, Tradition, which is decent, and then Creation, which is awesome. You take the Nahid's Distillation, you open up the door to Tradition, which is okay, Creation, which is awesome, and Destruction, which is awesome. So
And even the unsupported tribe factions like Aurelian, like
yeah, true story. Yeah. So I end up going with the Needs Distillation, but I mean, I'll be honest with you, I will not fault anyone for taking any of these 4 cards, to be completely honest with you. I think out of all of them, Majestic Skies is probably the weakest one, but I mean, we just literally found justifications for all of them. So
cool.
All right, awesome. That's our pack 1 pick 1 for today. That was exciting. Thank you guys so much. That was very insightful. Hopefully we helped people make some decisions in the future whenever they come across those tough packs where you just kind of want to take it all.
Yeah, that was a heck of a pack.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, especially I feel like with the Goblin drafting, man, there were so many packs where there were like 3 or 4 cards that I wanted to take. Like, there's definitely no lack of playables in this format. All right, so that leads us to our main topic. So all of us play this game to have fun, right? That's what we're here for. But some of us are a little more competitive. Some of us are a little less competitive. But we all would like to get better. At the very least, lose less. And so we're here today to talk about some tips and tricks that we all use to improve our own gameplay that hopefully you can apply to your own games and skills to, just get better at the game. So a couple of disclaimers. Point blank, I want to go ahead and state that you have to be honest with yourself. You have to understand that you will make mistakes or play suboptimal lines, which means that you have to be willing to listen to other people that tell you that, as well as understand that you did that yourself and not feel like, oh yeah, I just played it while they just literally, drew the nuts, or I flooded. Yes, there will be some of those games, but you really have to find out, even in those games where you flood, you can go back and find out if there were some bad trades that you made, or if you were not aggressive enough or too aggressive that led you to a position where you were leaning on your top decks a little more than you should have. And then also, hey, sometimes you actually play the best game possible and did everything correct and still lose. There have been plenty of times in my career, both playing Eternal and Magic, where I've lost the game and I just go to the people watching and like, hey, like, did you see where my error was? I think maybe that I used that removal spell wrong. And they were like, no, that was the correct play at the time. It just happens. Your opponent sometimes outplays you, or things line up not in your favor. Have you had some experience with that, John?
Oh, definitely. It's, in limited, it's like maybe their card quality is just better, and that's just a luck of the draft kind of thing. And constructed, it's a little different. There might just be a bad matchup. Where no matter how optimally you play, if the opponent draws a little better, and just because of the percentages of that particular deck versus deck matchup, you're just their deck is favored a higher percentage of the time and things like that. So, yeah.
Plus, once you identify the matchup, there's a chance where you also know what's in their deck and have a better idea of what to play around, versus limited, you really don't have any idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, especially with those draft packs. But yeah, I mean, so you can sometimes you'll play around like a rare or something that you're seeing frequently. But yeah, I mean, legendaries, like you should not really play around things like that.
Yeah.
The chances of seeing them are so low.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, slight humble brag. I actually played around a rare the other day. I mean, they didn't have it, but I forgot who I was playing against. But the opponent attacked. We had kind of a stalled board state. They had a couple of flyers or whatever, and they ended up attacking. Very weird. Like, it was just a weird attack, the 3 or 4 units they attacked with. So I sat there and somehow identified that all the units they attacked with only had 1 battle skill or no battle skill, and they left behind all the ones with 2. So then I started to think of Unexpected Assassination. So yeah. I mean, they didn't have it, but they were in the colors and they had the power for it. It lined up where it was just, I don't know. I was very proud of myself for at least attempting to play around a rare, but ironically, there was no way to play around it. Like, I was just like, well, all my blocks I don't have anything with double battle skills, so they're just gonna wipe my board. So I'm like, okay, let me just make normal blocks then. So I guess not very a humble brag, I guess.
Well, deciding to make normal blocks as opposed to doing something wacky and hurting yourself, that was a good heads up play.
Thanks. Appreciate the lifeline through me.
Yeah.
All right. So this leads us into our first point, and this is assess both your wins and losses to identify a single mistake if possible. This is really it's really nitpicking, and honestly, it's probably the least beneficial because sometimes it's a series of plays that lead you into it. But in limited, especially, there are times where you can tell 100% that one misblock or combat trick or something just blew you out in a turn or blew your opponent out, and that's when the game was decided. And so in limited, it's a little bit easier to identify that. But the important thing is to make the effort of actually doing that, because too often we're like, all right, that's a loss. Let me queue back up so I feel better. Or, all right, cool, we won that game. Awesome. Let's move on. And the truth of the matter is that there is still plenty of information to be gained from both those wins and losses, where you can like, hey, I won that game because he double blocked or they double blocked in this manner, and I had the combat trick to blow them out, or I waited on not using my one removal spell on unit A, and then the next turn they played unit B that was a much bigger threat, and that's why I won. And the same thing with losing, like, hey, I used my combat trick way too early that game, or I rushed in when they had open power for a biting win. And those single points can really start to, it's kind of like when you make a really horrible mistake, you typically don't make it again. Well, sometimes you can learn from those mistakes that weren't that bad, or even those good decisions.
And sometimes that, single mistake can literally happen before the game even starts, in the deck building phase or something like that in limited, And then there's also the mulligan phase. Sometimes you keep a bad hand, and you're in your mind, maybe you're just thinking, oh, I got RNG'd, but hey, you just kept your first 7 without trying to mulligan, without recognizing that maybe you should have mulligan there, and then you just move on to the next one, and you don't even think about that.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. Yeah, again, we never got our third color. Well, did you keep a hand with only one influence, So
did you mulligan to 6? Well, no, I didn't even mulligan for my first 7. It's like, well, yeah, maybe that was your first mistake,
See, and that's actually a really good point too, because that actually helps with some of the feel bads, where that happened to us in the last stream, actually, because I didn't like my 7, I redrew, didn't like my 7, redrew, and then we were I think it was either 4 or 5 color deck. I don't remember. It was the Goblin draft, but then my 6 going down to 6, it gave me 3 fire. I was like, all right, well, this is horrible, but let's see. And then I ended up proceeding to draw another fire and then 1 shadow, and that was it. And I lost that game. But there was no feel bads about it, right? Because I mulled to 6, I did what I could, and RNG bit the bullet, so there was nothing I could do there. And so I lost, but there wasn't any feel bads because I did the best thing that I could do to get there. So,
and in that case, you didn't even make the mistake in the deck building because the goblins trolled you.
Yeah, true story. Alex, do you have anything? Have you played games where you felt like you identified the turn or the play that cost you or won you the game?
Well, yeah, definitely. That's when you start playing a game a lot, you're gonna see plays like that. And what I guess just wanted to hit home the statement that you made about that you're gonna make mistakes. So if you're open to that idea, then you'll be open to learning from your mistakes.
That's a good life lesson, right? Just be open to feedback,
Yeah, and
keep an open mind.
Yeah, especially with the Eternal community, don't take any feedback in a bad way, because most people are out there trying to help you get better, make good decisions. But so I was thinking a little bit about this. It's it's easy to learn, or easier. Well, first off, after each game, it might be a super nerdy thing of me to do, but I kind of reflect on that game a little bit. And watching streamers, they kind of just they go into the next game right away, and maybe they talk about the game a little bit, but then you're right into the next game, so it's you're focused on the new plays. Whereas I try to take something out of each game, what could I have done different? Did I win that game because I pulled a crazy win vote card? Did I have no reason winning that game, or did my deck follow its game plan? Did I have a plan, and did it basically follow through the way that I thought it was going to happen? So you can learn from your decks. When you lose, it's super easy, but when you win, it's a little bit harder. So it's easy to just go into the next game feeling good. Yeah, I won, but there's always stuff in the game that you probably could have done better. So it's try to reflect on the games even when you win, instead of just being because a lot of games are you won it when your opponent just was stuck on power, or
Yeah.
like they didn't really get their cards, and like you just had you drew a few games in a row where you just drew the best hand that your deck can get. So it's like you kind of were a little bit lucky. So maybe take that into account, like try to reflect on learning from that, being like trying to draft better even though you won. I don't know if I'm even making sense right now, but that's what I'm.
No, yeah, that
Good
makes
points.
that makes a lot of sense. It's actually something that I need to do better about, because you're right, especially mentioning streamers. I actually have a post-it on my monitor that says take a waypoint, so I remind myself, and I've gotten better about it, but there are some games where I'm like, all right, cool, there you go, and I queue up again, where I should take a moment to not only answer questions but also find out like where we made a good play, where we made a bad play. And I like your point on figuring out if your deck deployed its game plan, right? That's a very good thing. We've talked about that several times on the show and previous shows about deck building and stuff. Like, what's your deck's plan? And I think it's good to review that and be like, hey, especially when you're going with a more synergistic deck, like, did we do what we wanted to do? Like, what won us? Was it nuts and bolts limited, or because we synergized? And I think that's a very good point. Another point on feedback as well is, yeah, be open to suggestions. And it's funny because I have caught that now in life as well as in the Eternal community, where people are like, hey, are you open to feedback? You know, because they understand that some people aren't, and they're going to take it, even if it comes from a good place and it's presented correctly, some people are still going to be like, not going to want to hear it. So it is funny that some people are like, hey, so how do you feel about feedback about your plays? Because I have a perspective. And, you know, understand that people are doing that to help you, and maybe even to help themselves. I've done that before as well, where I've come up to someone and asked them, hey, why did you make this play? And they somewhat feel a little defensive, and they try to justify it. I was like, no, that's fine. I didn't think it was a right or wrong play. I just wanted to know why you did it, because that didn't cross my mind. And
yeah, I've spectated you, even just chatting on Discord or whatever, and I'll ask you that question, and sometimes it's enlightening. I'm like, man, I didn't even think of that. You know, it's not like none of us are just masters, right? We're not like chess grandmasters where it's a game with RNG, and there's so many lines like at any given moment, right? Like having a different perspective is just so helpful sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. And it is, and sometimes you find out that you weren't wrong in the way, but you were the not optimal line, if that makes sense, right? There have been times where you've asked me, I've told you, hey, this is what I was thinking. You're like, yeah, that's a good point. But then after you explain to me your thought process, I'm like, you know what? That probably gives me a higher win percentage there. So you're right.
Yeah, and in a game like this, that's a lot of these lines, at the end of the day, that's what you're going for, is like the highest percentage. Like sometimes you go for the lower percentage and it works out, but I mean, if you want to be consistent, that is not the way to be, right?
Like sometimes you were so far ahead that even picking the non-optimal line, you still won. So that's something that gets lost in the wash when you win a lot. You're like, there was a better line out there, but I'm kind of blind to it because what I won anyways, But if you like take a second to pause, and as a streamer, you have all chat like, hey, what did you guys see there that I did wrong? And everyone, I'm sure a lot of people have ideas all the time. So
yeah, and that's actually something we're gonna bring up a little bit later. I just want to try to somewhat stay on these show notes. What are some of these other scenarios that you have on here, Alex? Because we kind of bled into the number 2 reason. Like, I didn't even notice we did that, but number 1 was trying to pinpoint a specific play, and then number 2 is essentially the same thing, what we've been talking about here, but taking broader strokes and trying to see the overall, if things like, were you too aggressive the whole game, and things like that. So what else do you have on here, Alex?
So another thing about when you're assessing your wins and losses, you identify if you did you have a plan? Did you when you drafted your deck, it synergized and you executed that game plan? When you lose, oftentimes the reason is clear. Your game plan didn't work, or your opponent just had the nut draw. It's a lot easier to extract specific info that could lead to your loss, such as misplay or punt-to-wands, as Jedi calls them. When you improper sequencing of your plays, sometimes if you do 2 spells in the reverse order, that costs you the game.
Oh God, I'm so bad about that. Picking the wrong power. I do that all the time on stream.
Like I'm sometimes I'm so good about that that I do the next thing a lot, which is forgetting about activations that I have on board, and then like that it's like, oh, if I would only activated this, I would have won. It's like that one gets me sometimes because it's like so small on the screen because I'm playing on my phone and I miss it.
You know what was the
And
biggest one that I think most people missed? John, do you remember the 2/4, the Amanara? I think it was the 2/4 that whenever you played a spell that turn, you
Scout
could
every
scout.
turn?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it had no identifier for it. It just, oh my god, I missed that one so many times. But because of that, I finally got better. I would always check it before I passed the turn.
Right? Yeah, I'm the same way with that one.
then eternal, such as in life, there's always someone that's going to be out there that's better than you, and sometimes your opponent just they're a good drafter and they like have four legendaries that like made their deck, and like there's nothing you could do. You're just gonna lose. Um, so like there's not much to learn sometimes in those games. You're like you need to learn like life lessons of patience and like acceptance and going on to the next game type of stuff. But like when you win and you're able to find areas that would have like slightly increased your percentage, like slightly better play that will affect your results in future games, like different lines of play that you could have taken. So like that's harder to do when you win the game. So it's easy for misplays to get lost in the wash when you win, but they can easily cost you games at a later time.
hmm I think one of the other things to take into account as well when you're looking at these broad strokes, like your overall game plan, is a next level up moment. I think everyone, both in constructed and limited, but especially in limited, is to play to your outs, right? And a lot of new players kind of always look at what's in their hand, what's on the board, what's in their void, and that's it. And they don't look ahead to see, because sometimes you will make a what seems like a suboptimal play at the time, so you won't do it, but it facilitates you getting to your out in your deck, right? For example, I don't know, I can't think of something off the top of my head, but you make a block that that doesn't look optimal, right? You have a better blocker, or you take face damage going lower than you think, but you're like, okay, I have one other unit that I could play to triple block this big guy and get it off the board. So I think, but if I chump block my one unit now, it doesn't matter what I draw, I won't be able to take it out through blocks. There you go.
That's a good example.
Yeah, so things like that where you can't tell that by a specific turn, but if you look overall, hey, I was playing this way, but I knew I had a burn spell in my deck that could do 6 points of damage, so I should have been playing more aggressive to get my opponent down to 6 where I could stabilize or at least try not to die until I draw that burn spell. Versus if you don't think about that obliterate in your deck, then you're not going to make some slightly aggressive plays and not give yourself that additional win con. If your opponent's at 8 and you draw obliterate, it doesn't quite get you there.
Yeah. We slightly touched on this, but another thing to think about as far as broad strokes here is as right here in the notes, right? Identify an overall pattern that helps you win or lose. Like, are you persistently being too aggressive, not aggressive enough? Like, every game of limited is different, yeah, but sometimes you just have a tendency to go one way or the other, and I don't, that you might not even realize it, right? Like, try and identify that kind of stuff, and just be self-conscious about it, and that'll help you just figure out where a hole in your play might be, right?
Yeah, and it's something that you and I have been going back and forth with each other all the time, John, is that I'm typically a more conservative player, you're a more aggressive player. And so I have tried to improve my aggression and look at the ace space a little more often than I normally would. And then the flip side is there have been times where you're like, yeah, I would have ace space there and then I would have died. So kudos to you. And so there's no right answer, right? You shouldn't always play conservative. You shouldn't always play aggressive. Sometimes you're the beatdown, and it's just adjusting those numbers. You know what I mean? Sometimes you should play. There are a couple of times where, case in point, going back to my earlier example with the obliterate, where if I was a little more aggressive, got in a couple more chip damage throughout the game, I would have been a closer or better position to winning towards the end. Or sometimes you guys have seen me do it as well, which is why you win some games as well, John, where you do those things where like, wait a minute, he's almost dead if I just make a couple of suboptimal blocks and let some damage go through. And you have to be able to identify that, where all of a sudden you went from being defensive to having a chance to steal in the game.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, some people overexert themselves. That happens a lot. And then a lot of times your opponent is playing too conservatively and not attacking you when they should and giving you the out, like letting you attack. Like something we talked about is, I think we talked about it like a few weeks ago or whatever, like when you start your turn, or like, okay, what happens if I ace space here? Like, not saying do it every time, but what happens?
That should be a thing on your checklist, like for each turn, right?
mm-hmm, yeah.
There's so much damage that like later in the game, your opponent was at 4 and you lost. You're like, I wonder if just a couple more ace spaces like would have done it. And
one of the things I do now, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish.
No, I was done.
Okay. One of the things that I like to do, and you guys have seen me do it, I don't just do it for the stream benefit, I do it for myself as well. I've done it throughout my course, is if I miss damage, or if I would have done something that would have done more damage, I keep track of that. And sometimes it is tilting for sure when I'm like, oh man, I forgot to attack with this thing, so that's 2 damage. All right, let's assume our opponent's at 2 less. And at the end of the game, if I win or lose, I identify like, did that 2 points of damage make a difference? And sometimes I lose and my opponent's at 2 or 1, and I'm like, yep, that would have made a difference. Or the other way around, where I'm like, hey, I got them to 1 and I have to wait 1 more turn. So I did win that game, but if I had gotten that 2 damage in, it would have been 1 turn less. And so that's something I try to use as a tool myself to keep track of things like that. But we have talked a lot about using the community, and we're going to go into that a little bit more as well. Some of these points definitely overlap. But John, why don't you talk about some things that you can do on your own as well?
Sure. One thing that can possibly help literally anyone, as long as you have the ability to do this, is to record your gameplay and maybe even the draft portion to review yourself. One way to do it is streaming on Twitch. You just have VODs turned on. I play on Xbox a lot. It's easy to do game DVR stuff on there. Any modern computer should have the capability to just record, with or without OBS. Like, I think the newer version of Windows has some recording capabilities built in, and it's pretty straightforward. And
you can do it on your phone too.
Yeah, even playing on your phone, it's possible. And on some phones, it's actually easy. So something to consider. You might think it's silly, but literally, if you go back and watch these gameplay videos from like a reflective perspective, or just with an open mind, maybe think as if you weren't the one even playing those games. Like, what would I have done there? Or, and obviously you don't want to necessarily consider what about happening in the future of that game, but as each scenario comes up, like, think about maybe what you could have done different there. Things like that. Another thing you can do is keep like a record of your wins and losses, and keep track of kind of the reasons why. Obviously flood and drought can be a reason, but that's not something you want to focus on, because that's kind of out of your control, unless you're just not building your deck correctly and not including enough power or too much power, something like that. Assuming that you've got the numbers where they should be, you want to identify, like we talked about earlier, like play patterns. Like, yeah, I only attacked with my 1 flyer when I probably could have attacked with these 2 ground units too. Like, yeah, I would have traded a unit off or 2 units off or whatever in that case. But going back and seeing that whole game, yeah, it turns out that would have pushed me over the top and I would have won that game based on what happened. Another thing you can do is, keep track of cards that made more of an impact maybe than you thought, or less of an impact during the games, as far as differences between your personal card evaluations and your draft portion and their performance, like out in the real world, quote unquote, right?
That's a very good point, because that's how you make your own card evaluation, right? And that's how you get better at it. When you like, I don't understand. I think I listened to Eternal Journey. They thought this card was bad, but I think it's really good, so I'm going to play it. And if you take notes and you're like, hey, this card won me the game, 3 out of 4 times, well, then now you have your own assessment of it. Or the flip side where you're like, I think this card is good, but hey, it's only won me the game 1 out of 4 times. Okay, maybe it's not that good.
Yeah, we have to do the set review basically before we get to play with these cards, right? I mean, we change our minds, the next day, and then throughout the entire format, we come up and down on cards just as we play games, and other people's perspectives that we may not have even thought of, or like uses for a niche card or something like that. I mean, you should never be scared to have a different opinion from someone else, as far as card evaluation and things like that.
Mm-hmm. The other thing about recording as well is that they don't always have to be videos. Sometimes just a screenshot will help do the point as well.
Yeah, good point. Like we do later on in the podcast in the What's the Play.
Yeah, exactly. Taking a screenshot of a difficult draft pick, or taking a screenshot of your deck, or taking a screenshot of a specific play that you're kind of like, well, I see 3 lines, or I'm not really sure how to get out of this. Sometimes just stepping back and you viewing it later on will give you a different perspective when you're not emotionally involved.
Yeah. And then basically the only thing better than going back and reviewing your own draft is our next point, right? Like, having other people watch that gameplay, because that is an actual different perspective, right?
Yeah, you and I have already hinted at, well, shoot, even we've done it together where the 3 of us are on a call. When one of us is drafting, we discuss draft picks, we discuss plays and stuff like that. And it's very insightful, especially in the moment, because that's one of the cool things that I know some people don't necessarily like about digital games, is that in a real card, if we were on a tabletop, casually, yes, we could talk to each other, but in a more competitive setting, we couldn't. But the fact is that we could hear, right? And we can, and sometimes, if it is a competitive setting, like us as a team are pretty good about not helping people till after, right? We'll just sit there and keep talking and chatting, and then after the game, be like, all right, let's talk about the game a little bit, and still let the person play. Like I said, this is a more casual setting, but
exactly. Yeah. When it comes to actual tournaments, we do not recommend and do not do that at all.
Yeah, I guess you're right. We might as well just throw that disclaimer out. Yeah, this is all in casual setting, guys. In competitive, we've been on calls with each other, but we're just kind of shooting the crap and stuff. And we might talk about stuff afterwards, but we're really good about not helping each other in competitive positions. And in fact, most of the time, I don't think we even screen share. I think we literally just talk.
No. Usually I usually prefer to play by myself in those cases, but if once you're already out of the running, then hey, let's just have some casual conversation. Who cares,
But anyways, going back to what we were talking about, having people look in and stuff is a lot of fun, and like I said, to an extent, this is pretty much what streamers do, right? I've been, every streamer has done it for the most part. I mean, some people. Never mind. I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole. Anyway, most of the time, people do exactly that, where they're like, "Hey, this is what I want to do. What do you think, chat?" And then some people will chime in with their different lines of plays, and sometimes if there's enough time, you'll have a discussion about it. And so this is something anyone can do with your friends. Like, have a friend come over, watch the screen with you, or you can screen share over Discord, or all kinds of great things like that, where 2 or 3 heads coming up with, and then sometimes you combine the 2, right? Sometimes it's like, "Hey, I want to attack here with this and this." And you're like, no, you need to attack with everything. And it's like, well, this is just a bad trade. Like, we're just trading here. So how about we attack with this and this instead? Okay, cool. Yeah. And then between the 2 of you come up with the optimal play, but you both saw 2 different perspectives and adjusted and met in the middle. So I think that's a very good tool. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, no, it's have other people's opinions and basically other people's evaluations of cards. A lot of times someone else will bring up something about a card, or it'll have a different line of text, the last line. I'm always horrible about reading the last line of the card. It's just great to talk about Eternal anyway. So yeah, hang out with your friends and do drafts and stuff. It's fun.
The last point I'll make on this one too is the cool thing about having that live look in as well is that it helps people play around tricks and identify stuff for the future, right? And that's one of the things that definitely helps, because sometimes people they forget about what could be in their opponent's hand, or little things like, it's like, hey, I want to play this out, and be like, yeah, but next turn, like for example, in the world of Grodov's Favored, you might be like, hey, I'm going to run out this really great super cool rare or whatever on turn 5, and it might take the person that you're watching and be like, hey, they're playing time and they're about to get 6 power, so Gridos Favor is a thing. And you're like, oh yeah. Or hey, they have 3 power up, have you considered Biting Winds? And so that's a really good spot where right away you can identify something that you may have not seen, that.
Yeah. Ideally, you're thinking about these things yourself once you're leveled up to that. But I mean, nobody is 100% able to think about all this stuff. Yeah, it's just not possible.
Especially like newer players, you'll get really wrapped up in like, oh, my deck's like it's doing its game plan, and then you're forgetting that your opponent's trying to mess that up for you.
True.
So, yeah, so it's good to have people to remind you about tricks and stuff like that.
And sometimes, once again, going back to multiple perspectives, it happened. Go back to my latest stream. I was like, I'm kind of feeling a Biting Winds. And then someone in chat was like, or Humbug Nest. I was like, oh, yeah, they have the power for that too. Okay, good point. So little things like that. All right, so we did talk about screen sharing on Discord, which is a great resource. But Discord actually offers another platform and resource. And Alex, why don't you go ahead and talk about that for us?
Well, I guess like for me, just the biggest asset is other members of the Eternal community, and like where you can be in touch with those folks, like on Discord, on Reddit. I mean, for me, it's mostly Discord. It's just one place. It's really easy. On Twitch, you can like ask people in the chat or the streamer directly. But so like my biggest go-to when I'm looking for help is because you can take screenshots and post it is in Discord, like Jedi's Discord. Farming Eternal is full of limited aficionados who are more than willing to give you a friendly advice and a lot of banter regarding whatever possible pick and any deck construction tips. Everyone doesn't always agree, but they're pretty good about giving you a reason for why they would pick that, and so you can learn a lot about other perspectives and why cards are good or why they might be bad. The one thing I would caution about that is try to stay away from like really hyperbolic analysis of cards. Like this is the best card ever, or like by far this is. Sometimes it is by far the best card.
Oh God!
Definitely don't say things like, "What are you thinking? Why would you pick the?" You don't need to be condescending. People aren't generally like that.
Yeah, no. But I'm saying it's like it's usually like when Caleb mentioned it a couple weeks ago. It's like. What's the best pick? Well, it depends. It's always like, is it the first pick or what other cards do you have? So like every card is taken with different context. But so, just, be wary of that kind of stuff because some people are more hyperbolic than others in their talk. And I try to like change what they're saying to, I think that is a very good card instead of, oh my God, that is the best card ever. I would give up all my,
There's no contest. Why would you actually consider any other card in this pack?
Oh my God, Precision Plunge.
I'm gonna plunge all over his face.
It doesn't work like that.
Oh God. Yeah, that's a very good point though, Alex. A very good point. I'm gonna touch on that as well, is that we're all here to learn, and sometimes the things are going to be opinionated. Sometimes things are factual. Sometimes things are emotion based. Obviously, when you win with a card, it's going to have a higher resonance with you than a card that you lose to, etc. Or even that's the same thing. Like every time you get lose, case in point, Retz Raven, right? A lot of people are like, Retz Raven's fine. And I'm like, oh my God, they played a Retz Raven.
That is an emotional response.
But when I am telling people, even with draft picks, I'm like, hey, this card does this. I like this card because of that. And things like that. So you really have to, if you're strong about a card, you can kind of say that like, hey, card XYZ is extremely strong. It's been powerful every time I've played it. I've grown every time my opponent plays it, things like that. But it's kind of like using semi-facts based on it versus just kind of sheer, like you said, just that hyperbolic, like, oh my God, you got to be insane to not just windmill slam this card. They might not know, and giving them a response like that makes them less inclined to ask a question again and further improve their game. And so
right.
And you as the recipient of that information has to take that as well. Don't take things so personal when people, that might just be their natural reaction to things and how they speak. And that's one of the reasons when we go back to our set review, if you guys listen to that, there were times where, you know, John and I were like, oh my God, this card is amazing. It's like, I know, right? This is crazy. This is awesome. So what do you want to give it? B minus. Like it's one of those things where you have to take things into context, and you want to try to be not necessarily neutral. Like at the end of the day, we're all friends. We're all trying to have fun. So it's okay to get excited or bad about cards, you know, just like you guys have heard me say, like, oh my God, I lost to this horrible card. It's like, oh my God, really? Like, you know, it doesn't mean I suck. The gameplay just played out in a manner where that bad card ended up doing work. And so it's fun to share things like that and just be mindful of that as well. The other cool thing about screenshot based discussions is the fact that you can hit more people because it's not a who can see it right now, right then and there.
Yeah.
You know, we've had discussions where we post a what's the play, and you know, you may have drafted by that point, you may have not or something, or made the play obviously because you're in the middle of a game. But when you have 24 hours worth of information coming at you, like you can have some really good discussions, and you feel a little less pressured as well to look at it real quick and respond super fast and all that stuff. So
Great points.
did you have anything to add to that, John?
Not really. I do think that is one of the best avenues. Like obviously you're for what's the play. I mean, it's just a learning opportunity because you're not going to be able to get live help in that manner, but it's just as helpful in the long term as far as upping your game and things like that. If you have a ton of patience, then literally posting every screenshot during the draft picking process is a thing you can do. And, you know, if you're newish to draft, especially, maybe you should do, or, you know, maybe even if you're a seasoned vet, you know, just hearing a different perspective on each individual pick can actually be very helpful. Like, you know, there's no shame in doing it, that's for sure. And there's so many really, really good players that are willing to help anyone in these discords we mentioned. I highly recommend this for anyone to do. And there's nothing easier, you know, than taking a screenshot, right? Like sometimes recording can be a little cumbersome or something like that. Screenshots are super easy.
The one thing I will say as well about what you touched on as far as posting every pick in your draft is the selfish reasons. I love when people do that because then I get to draft again for free. So that's always fun. I think it's great. That's one of my favorite things for sure. When people do that, I think it's a lot of fun. And especially in a format like this right now, where we see just a preposterous amount of playables in each pack, there's a lot of tough picks out there.
Absolutely.
And you know, if you're an up and coming player, it feels really good when players that you think are better than you have like solidify what you said, you know, where you're like, hey, these cards are pretty close together, but I think this is the best pick. And when, you know, two players that you look up to are like, yeah, I agree, that's the best pick for sure. Like it really makes you feel good and helps you feel more confident in your plays and want to continue to grow as well.
Yeah, it's really nice to feel confident that you're doing something correct. And yeah, that's one way to basically make sure you are, right? Like, or just hammer that home. Like, oh man, I guess you were posting something and you're like feeling really unsure about it. Well, all these people think that you were doing it exactly right. Well, that should make you feel very good.
Yep. So now we're going to go into our final kind of things to really fine tune and how for you to take this information, right? All the data you're receiving and improve. And the first thing is kind of like what Alex mentioned earlier in the show is, you know, we're both trying to be a little more aggressive in our gameplays, which is funny because in Constructed, I normally lean towards aggressive decks, but for some reason Limited, I'm like, no, I only have one of these. I got to make it last. Is to make a single point of improvement per session of gameplay, right? And it's very easy to get overwhelmed with things and be like, okay, I got to work on this. I got to work on that. I got to work on that. And then something slipped through the crack. Take every journey one step at a time, right? Start with, hey, I want to be a little more conservative with my removal spells because I keep firing them off at the very first target I see. And more often than not, they play something that's an even bigger threat later on and I don't have my removal anymore. So as you're playing your games, you ask yourself, hey, is this a worthy target for my removal? Should I wait for it? Is this going to kill me, or can I answer it a different way? Is it already dead on board? And you continue to do that until that starts to become second nature. Then you can look into, okay, now I want to try to make sure I'm getting in chip damage where I can. And just picking a single point and reminding yourself about that every game. Once again, going back to what Alex said is, every turn where it's feasible, should I A space here? No. Okay, cool. Move on. Hey, should I A space here? Hey, wait a minute. I actually should here. Okay. And
Yeah.
that way you start slowly but surely improving your arsenal and the way your brain works, and making more things become automatic to you. And that's the kind of stuff that you see from the very good players, where they're making so many different assessments at the same time, and they do it continuously, where they see every line, and it's because they've trained themselves to do that.
Yeah, it's literally all just practice, right? And that's a great way to do it. One thing at a time, baby steps. Like you said, one whole session, concentrate on getting better at this. One whole session, maybe work on your mulligans. Yeah, exactly. Great points.
Oh yeah, there you go. Good. Going back into deck building and mulliganing. Do you not redraw aggressive enough, right? We did a whole podcast on how to redraw and when, because let's just face it, the majority of people don't redraw enough, especially with your first one being practically free because you're not even going down a card. And so look at that. Like, hey, tell yourself any hand that's medium to below, I'm going to redraw instead of keeping sketchy hands, and see if it improves. And you'll find out, you start to kind of lose that worry of like, oh man, is the next one going to be worse? And you're like, no, actually most of the time it ends up being better. Same thing with deck building. If you find yourself like, man, I never have enough 2-drops, or I value 5-drops too heavily, you go in there like, hey, this draft, I'm going to pick 2 5-drops and that's it. So, pick my poison type thing.
Yeah.
Anything to add on that, Alex?
No, not too much. You guys hit it pretty well on the head.
Sweet. So our next one is a little interesting. This kind of leans a little bit towards constructed a little bit more, just because of the fact that in limited, you can't necessarily, you can always force an archetype, but we prefer to we preach on taking the open lane, so you have an overall higher power level of a deck. But one of the best ways to identify holes in your game playing against certain strategies is to play those strategies and those archetypes, so you can find out what the key cards are, what they're trying to establish, what they're trying to do, how they win, and things like that. John, talk to us a little bit about how that can be used to improve your game.
Yeah, it's possible in limited. If you draft enough, eventually you'll get happen to be in the lanes of all these different decks or whatever. But like you said, it's not exactly something you should be forcing necessarily. But just by going through the reps with these other deck archetypes and other decks, it really will open your eyes to more lines of play, than otherwise. If you're playing against them, you'll get somewhat familiar with what's going on with their deck and what they're trying to do, but there's going to be some different strategies that you'll never ever think of if you're only sitting on the one side of that table. One unfortunate thing is you kind of have to have a bigger collection or pool of resources in order to really do this, as far as playing meta constructed decks, but
very good point.
Yeah, but as far as just the archetypes and play styles, you can build a budget version of most things, right? And just kind of, if you only ever play control, build some cheap aggro deck and get some reps in, and just kind of see what the whole mentality of that play style is, things like that.
Yeah, it's funny because it sounds kind of automatic and stuff like that, but I'm telling you, it really, really opens your eyes to what cards matter, what cards don't, how to play around it, how to play against it, and it makes your own gameplay better. I promise you. Going back to the example that John just said, if you're always playing control and you feel like sometimes aggro decks really crush you, I'm telling you, if you play aggro decks for a little bit and you see how important, what the threshold is, you can take 2 damage a turn isn't enough, but 4 damage is enough. How to deploy your hand. You flip the script again, and you feel like you really understand what they're trying to do, and you can almost start to read their plays because they're like, well, according to these attacks, I feel like they're holding this, and It really does go a long way, man. And it helps you identify what cards are important, what cards are not. So good point though on the collection for sure. It's not for everybody, but you have some extra shift stone laying around. It playing a certain archetype definitely goes a long way.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ways to like make a more budget replacement for certain cards in like a meta deck. You know, like something that does the job almost as good. You know, one example would be what's that Rakano weapon that's always in the markets? The plate, deep forge plate.
Hmm.
You know, just replace that with a Morning Star, right? Like things like that are pretty easy to do to help you try and test these decks out yourself. And it kind of goes back with what we said a minute ago about you know, single points of improvement. You know, one thing at a time. Well, this also will help you, you know, make these kinds of thought processes and decisions more automatic. And that's, you know, in any game where there's a timer, you want as many things as possible to be fast and automatic, so that when a unique or new situation does present itself, you have the time and the brain capacity right in that moment to, you know, figure out what's going on before you just get slapped in the face, right? With some off the wall maneuver that your opponent's doing, right? Like you ideally can, you know, when they're doing something you've never seen before, hopefully you can think about what they might be up to, you know, things like that.
And as far as limited, be okay with going out of your comfort zone and playing different decks. Because like if you like identify yourself as an aggro player or control player, mid range, whatever. If you're closing yourself off from all these other decks, potentially the most powerful archetype in the format, then you're really limiting, you know, a lot of win percentage there. So be open minded about the types of decks you can play and just get comfortable with different archetypes and, you know, being aggressive or defensive. Yeah, as far as limited.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, 100%. The big thing is like factions, right? People fall into their comfort zone and they're like, "Oh, I like drafting Praxis, so I'm gonna try to use any excuse to draft it." Other people are like, I like Argenport because I get all the removal." And you know, you never know. You're hurt. You might be hurting yourself if the open lane, for example, is a Legion, and that's the lane you should be in, and but you don't see it because you rather stick to your comfort zones. I've done it myself, right? You guys heard me talk about it. I'm very skeptical about the 5-color good stuff decks, and yet, you know, sometimes I'm like, hey, the fixing's there. I have to, if the power level's there, that's what I should go for, especially in these goblin drafts.
Yeah, you might get a few percentage points, you know, just from being so familiar with the playstyle and archetype, but I think you get more like win percentage points there if you are in that open lane, right?
Exactly.
At the like over on average.
No, yeah, you bring up a very good point though. I definitely agree. Getting your reps in with a deck or an archetype definitely goes a long way because, like you mentioned, more things become automatic. But I mean, going back to broad strokes, let's be honest. We play limited because A, we don't need cards, and B, we have a chance of having an entirely new deck every time we draft. So, I mean, sometimes it's encouraged to do different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Alex, do you have anything else on this topic? Even though that was a great last point, I definitely liked it.
No, that's it.
All right, cool. Do you want to go into our second to last point? Because I'll definitely spearhead our last one since I'm probably the biggest, excuse me, perpetrator of it.
Well, this one's pretty self-explanatory in the sense that if you want to get better, this is for me a lot like if because I can't play as much as I would like to play, so I watch streamers play on Twitch. YouTube videos. Jedi puts out a lot of videos. Kalibovich, there's a lot of streamers and different content creators that make draft videos and ranking of cards and record their games. And then there's podcasts such as, you know, this one or Farming Eternal, where people are just talking about this stuff and trying to get you better at playing limited. So it's out there. And it's not that hard to find. Yeah. So
Yeah, we have a small gaming community, but boy, do we have some high quality, you know, content creators with some high level content, right? Like it's definitely out there, like you said. I consume a lot of this content myself. You know, at no point am I like, man, I'm so good at this game, like I have nothing more to learn. No, like every day I try and, even if I'm just casually watching something in the background, I just happen to look up and I literally learned something. Like
Yeah,
it's a really good way to level up your game.
for sure. I mean, all three of us are on this podcast, and we still consume other podcasts as well. So it's and like you said, it's a good way to get your fill of the game we like when you're not quite able to play it as well. The one thing I will add, though, when you're consuming content, especially watching people draft, especially and gameplay as well, actually it goes across the board, is try your best to say what you want to do or what you would do before the streamer or the YouTuber does it. And the reason why I say this is because it's very easy to wait until and just kind of consume it, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong about this. I'm just saying, just as another level up moment is, for example, if they're drafting and you're like, oh, I would take this card, and then if they take the same card, cool, like you're on the same sheet of music. And if they take a different card, then if it's on Twitch, then ask like, hey, I would have taken this card, why do you value this one over that one, just so you can get some feedback. But even on YouTube, there's some value to be had, because it's too easy for the way our brain works, that if they make the pick and then you think about it, your brain would be like, yeah, I would have made that pick too, that makes sense, unless it's like completely off. But more often than not, you will just side with what the person on the video is doing, because they're probably justifying it as they're making the pick. So you're still learning, you're still getting better, but you're missing out on a little bit of a teachable moment, so to speak, when you naturally wouldn't make that pick. And so that's why I encourage you, if you can, to just throw it out there real quick, a second, even if you're a little bit faster, right? If you don't want to sit there and pause the video or whatever, be like, oh, I'd take this. And then when they say something, you've solidified what your pick would be, and so you made it independent of their influence, if that makes sense. I don't know if I explained that correctly, but
I think so. Yeah, okay. That makes a lot of sense, and that's a great way to do it. It can turn. I mean, Twitch is obviously interactive, but like you said, on YouTube or something, it turns that static content into something that's basically interactive, and it helps you learn things, that you may have been a little more closed-minded about. If like you said, you're considering these things after the streamer or whatever has already kind of discussed them.
All right, and that takes us to our final one, point number 9. And this one I am it's so, I'm gonna tell myself I only do this when I'm streaming, but gosh, do I do this more often than I care to admit, because it's happened to me before. Thankfully I've never lost a tournament because of it, but I have. Man, it's come close. Is read the card, guys. Like, especially some of these cards that have multiple lines of text, right? Little things like what's her name now? The 3/2 from the last set that had lifesteal, and then she put to -1/-1 counter, or not Olivia. Counter. Olivia. Yeah. Was it Olivia?
I think it's Livia Hexweaver, right?
Olivia. Yeah, there you go. Yes. Oh my God. Like, her text comes like, A, anything with endurance can't block, and then B, the -1/-1 curse, it goes on everything with the same name. So there were times where I made suboptimal plays, or my opponent wrecked me, or I crushed my opponent because one of us didn't read the card. And
well, also that little word at the beginning, onslaught, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you skip past that and think it's going to do the ability.
Yep. Most recently, I forgot that and the thing is sometimes you do it and then you think you know the card and you just forget all the applications. Like, there was one time where I failed to block with a unit when I had Wind Conjuring in my hand, and I knew Wind Conjuring gave endurance. I knew it gave a +4/+4, but I forgot that it readied the unit as well. And
yeah,
so
those words are just kind of hiding there at the front of all that other text that you're much more familiar with.
Yeah, and the thing is I knew it did that because I'm almost positive I've broken a permafrost with it before, but it comes up so few and far between that I just didn't have it on autopilot. And so it happens sometimes, and so you can really just clean up your game a little bit by reading the card. And I'll tell you this right now, a lot of people still do it, and there's absolutely no shame in it. And I need to do it more. Like I said, I'm going to fall back on that streamer thing and just say I do it because I'm interacting with chat. But man, have there been times where someone in chat is like, hey, you might want to read that card again. Or like, right. Hey, the text on this card is quite relevant. I'm like, what? Oh yeah. So yeah, read the card, guys. Don't hesitate to or don't assume that you know the card 100%. Just look over it real quick. And that's
This might be a little like too next level, but like along the lines of reading the card is like, if you know 100% what the card does, then don't read it. Like, because I don't want my opponent knowing that I'm like looking at my cards or thinking about my stuff or reading their card, like they're thinking I'm going to target it. If I know what their card does, I don't even touch it or click on it.
That's true. That's some next level stuff for sure. I mean, if you want to next level, have a Eternal Warcry on a different window or whatever, and type the card name in there so you don't hover over it in game and give away some info.
Boom! Look at that.
Boom! Yeah, that's there you go. That is next level stuff. But
that's right.
I was just thinking about
why
that.
Stop it next.
Inception. Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I definitely try my best not to click over my opponent's stuff, but you're right. It's probably just as valuable to not click over my stuff so they don't know what I'm trying to work with.
Or like sometimes like my opponent's like clicking on like, why are they hovering on my stranger? Like, what are they like my fixing
you can literally change their mind about a play if you like highlight one of their cards and they like weren't even thinking about that lower line of text at the bottom, some ability. Like, that's a fun point. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, quadruple next level. You just keep hovering over the unit. You don't want a combat trick, and then you combat trick a different one. Boom, blowout.
Hopefully, they're not just making these plays automatically, but you might make them second guess something with that. Yeah.
I mean, I swear sometimes I'm like, my opponent's got to be messing with me because like they're like, why are they touching all my stuff? Leave my stuff alone. Man, don't.
It's like in real life when you're playing cards with them, someone's eating a burger and they're like, "Can I see that card?" You're like, "No."
No. Let me flip it backwards for you. You could read it. There you go.
Actually, slight tangent. Never mind. It's not important. Anyways, let's move on. All right, so that's going to do it, guys. That's our tips and tricks for getting better and improving your game at Eternal. Hope you got something out of this and use it in the future, and let us know. Let us know in the comments below or in Discord which one of these tips and tricks helped you get better at Eternal, because at the end of the day, that's why we do this podcast, guys.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it. So that moves us into our next segment, which is the What's the Play? So what's the play this week? Quite interesting. Our opponent is on Instinct, almost a Genève. They're an Instinct. They're at 4 of 4 power. They have a Wormstone. We are Destruction, 5 of 5. And we, that's it. They're at 15. We're at 20. They have a Silenced, forgot what the 1/1 is it Archaeologist? I don't know what it is. Anywho, they have a Silenced 1/1. They have the 1/2 Stranger with the Interloper.
Mm-hmm.
We have a 2/1 Rectifier, a 4/2 Flying Durgan from Thunder of Wings, and the 1/5 Tower Top Patrol. Our opponent has 5 cards in hand, and we have a 4 cards in hand with Xenon Guardian, the 3/3 Endurance for 4 time, and then pay 8 to give it a +5/+5. We have Steel-Bound Hellkite, or Dragon, I think, which is the 7/7 for 7 fire, Flying Overwhelm. We have the Dancing Flame, which is the 4/4 for 5 red. And I believe it's going to have haste because it doesn't cost 3 and it doesn't have charge. Thank you. Sorry. And it's not a 6/6. So yeah, it has charge. Wow, that's thank you. First time I've done that. And Marsh Dragon, 3/1 for 5 shadow, and it has flying. And then when it comes into play, you can sacrifice unit. And I believe if we did it now, it would come in as a 3/4, so it would gain us 3 life. And it's our turn. So yeah.
The opponent also has a Wormstone in play.
I think Jedi.
Yeah. You mentioned that. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I didn't know when to mention it, so I just said it at the beginning. All right, so
my bad.
John, I think Alex did the last one, so you could start us off on this one. What's your play?
Okay, so the opponent has 5 cards in hand, and they did nothing on their turn, which is a little. I feel like they're gonna do some kind of fast spell to maybe get you, as well as pop this Wormstone here, right? Maybe a Biting Winds, maybe a Humbug Swarm, maybe even a Time Alert. So like those are kind of the three things I'm thinking that the opponent might be up to here. I guess I'm looking at playing this charge unit and just getting in there with, the 2 flyers maybe, as well as the charge unit. Even if the Wormstone is cracked here, it comes in not ready to block or anything. So like that block is not a concern. And you don't really want to lose your flyers to Biting Winds here, and by playing this higher statted unit, there's a chance, like if that's the trick, maybe they just burn it on that instead, and you can continue smashing in the air. If it's a Humbug Nest, yeah, you're probably just going to lose your 4/2 here, but this 4/4 gets chumped, maybe at least it gets a unit off the board, and you get in your 1 damage in the air. And then you have follow-up plays. You don't want to just throw your Rectifier under the bus here for a silence later on, or maybe just eating it with the Marsh Dragon later on. So I wouldn't attack with that for sure. There's also a thought, I guess, for this Xenon Guardian, but it's like less power efficient. And one thought there, I guess, would be is if you do think it's Biting Winds or something like that, like let's say they haven't had a pause yet, which would indicate that it's an on-attack kind of fast spell. By playing that Guardian, maybe you're convincing them that that's a bigger threat, and then maybe they will leave your flyers alone. But like on this board, those flyers are like the real threat, and like we know the opponent's about to have a 7/7 on the ground too, right? So yeah, I think my play is playing the Dancing Flame here and attacking with everything but the Rectifier.
Okay. What about you, Alex?
Yeah, that's pretty much, thinking about it, that's would be my play exactly. I think the not the Rectifier, but the Dancing Flame is going to be basically irrelevant after this turn,
Right.
unless you didn't attack. But then if it's the Swarm, they would still get their 7/7. So the most, you're using all your power other than the Marsh Dragon, which I would save to try to get more value out of. Try to save a little more life. I would probably just attack with the 4/2 and the 4/4, just to keep the 1/5 back to block whatever. But maybe that 1 extra point of damage, I definitely not the Rectifier. But yeah, I play the Dancing Flame, and
Well, they're at 15, so that's 3 swings versus more than 3 swings, right? That's one thought there. And like you're at 20, they're at 15. Like I don't care about the crackback from these dorks. And if they do summon a 7/7, they're probably going to attack with that. No, the Rectifier might just chump that if you feel that's necessary. That's my thought there.
so they're going to block the 4/4. So if 5 gets through, then it is a 3-turn clock, like you're mentioning. Then you could chump the 7/7 for a little bit. Well, for 1 turn, 2 turns, or no, just 1 turn with the Rectifier.
Yeah, it'd be 1, and then you'd probably just end up eating the Shade with the Marsh Dragon the next turn.
Yeah, and then you have another chump block there with the 3/3. Forget his name.
Yeah, or maybe maybe you draw a Stranger or something. Your top decks are either leading you into the Steelbound Dragon or buffing the Guardian, or maybe just some chump block dorks for the 7/7 you're gonna have to inevitably deal with. But either way, I like just continuing to smash in the air while you can.
And then if it's Biting Wind, then
Yeah.
try to get the Marsh Dragon out sooner and hope to draw fire to play your big one.
Yeah, so for me initially, I was reading Biting Wind, and so I was considering. One, I was reading Biting Wind, and the other thing is when I have the choice between a charge unit and not, I typically play the not unit first. That way, the following turn I could play the charge unit, and it's still 2 attacks, but you attack across you're it's a wider attack, if that makes sense, and your opponent has
it does,
and you surprise your opponent a little bit because they don't know you have the charge card in your hand, where they're like, okay, cool, I'm gonna get attacked by the Xenon Guardian next turn, and all of a sudden you have the Xenon Guardian plus the Dancing Flame is my default. And that was going to be my line when I was putting them on Biting Wind. Marsh Dragon obviously is off the table, even though it is another flyer. Here we would obviously sack the Rectifier, not really make good use of the Shade, which I think is a mistake. So there is an argument for Marsh Dragon, but in a position where you have the ability to sack Rectifier to silence something else, it's kind of beneficial. And so I wanted to wait, and we had 2 decent plays here. But once again, we then identified that also Humbug Nest is on the board, so that made it to where they were still going to pop Wormstone without getting aggressive, and I didn't like that. And we knew, much like John said, the Wormstone was going to be, or the worm was going to actually be exhausted. So I ended up going with the Dancing Flame. The thing is that both Biting Winds and Humbug Nest would have taken out our 4/2 Dragon. And I think that was our biggest clock in the air. So I actually ended up just attacking with the 1/5 Tower Top and the 4/4 Dancing Flame. And it, sure enough, it was Humbug Nest. And I believe they chump blocked the 4/4 and then took the one from the patrol. But and then we saved our dragon. So the game escalated way out of control after that. But yeah, I think both lines were fine. A spacing would have been fine. Well, obviously minus the Rectifier, we can agree that was a bad attack. We would have lost our dragon, which is a bit of a bummer, right? Because that significantly slows our clock down. And then obviously knowing they would have had the Wormstone means our Dancing Flame can't attack the next turn. But I definitely like forcing our opponent to make the play, right? And it just worked out. So yeah. I think that we about covered it. I don't think
that's the thing, though, right? Like that's what I mentioned before, right? Like you in the plays leading up to this, you should be able to tell like where those pauses are. And so if there's no pauses, but they have something, then it's like Biting Winds, right? But if you keep seeing these pauses, it's got to be, I would put them on Humbug Nest for sure. So that, like, if I had identified that there was always a pause there, that may have changed my mind about attacking with this 4/2. I definitely wouldn't want to run out this Guardian because like the thing just gets stonewalled by this 7/7 either way. So I mean, trying to smash this turn with that Dancing Flame is definitely the play with what's in your hand, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. Well, the way that it lined up, we weren't going to be able to identify because we didn't have a fast spell to see if they had a response. And the last turn they played Wormstone, so that spent all their power. So yeah, it wasn't clear up until this point. You bring up a very good point, though. That
makes sense.
You make up a very good point, though, as far as identifying, is it an end of turn pause? Is it, in combat pause to pick out between the two? But the way the turns played out, they, because they played a 3-drop and I think we bounced it for tempo. I don't remember exactly how it worked out, but
I do like what you said about the default normally being playing out the non-charge unit, right? But right, like in this case, they're about to come out with something that just stonewalls the ground, so that's not really an option.
Yeah. All right, cool. So yeah, we figured out. So I guess it's pretty much. I think we all agree on Dancing Flame and swinging. I think the only other discussion point would have been just between swinging with the dragon or not. And I think you two said yes, and then I said no. But we already know I'm a slightly more conservative player. So yeah, all right, cool, guys. That's the what's the play. Let us know in the comments below if you see a line that we did not play or if you agreed with one of us. So that brings us to our final segment, which is Constructed Corner. And we have the ECQ, right? Is it ECQ this weekend?
I believe so.
Yeah,
this is Expedition.
Yeah, I do know
ECQ.
that. So we're going to break down the Unseen deck. This deck got me to Masters in Expedition. I have a lot of fun with it. I will say that this is very much a high roll deck. Sometimes you can roll Reckless or Revenge, and it's less great. And then sometimes you can roll Unblockable and double damage, and you are king of the world.
Those are the two my opponents are always up to, for sure.
Or Aegis. Oh my god, I feel like all my opponents always get Aegis. It's not so bad when you're playing Armory because obviously your weapons don't care about Aegis, but I mean, obviously having 2 or 3 things survive the harsh roll off of the Vestige or Shinra Speaks is a little annoying. It's really good against dragons because they only get the 1 edict. You know what I mean? So if you can negate, you start taxing their removal that way, where they have to spend 2 on 1 card. It always feels kind of good.
The standard Dragons list. Mine has some additional tech for this business, but yeah.
Oh, I wasn't gonna mention yours, dude. I was keeping it under wraps.
Well, I can beat around the bush and mention it. That's fine.
Oh, I guess by the time they get this, it might. Some people will have time to audible into these decks, but
Yeah.
Okay, so anywho, all right, let me break down the deck for you guys. I think it's a lot of fun to play at the very least, and it's fairly inexpensive. Actually, looking at it, there's only one legendary, and it's actually my own tech. Well, not mine. It is Dub Mike's tech. So shout out to Dub Mike for this. But yeah, so you can actually make this a very budget version. So I might actually make a video on this. So 4 Fearless Crescendos, 4 Finest Hours, 4 Ghost Blade Outcast, 3 Seek Power, 4 Vara's Intervention, 2 Edict of Kodosh, that's my own edition, Outcast Elite, 4 Reborn Masters, 4 Switchblade Deadeye, 3 Tranquil Scholars, 4 Bisma Revered Elder, 4 Master's Blade, 4 Unseen Commando, 2 Zelia the Vain, there's the legendary, and then 3 Justice Sigil, 2 Shadow Sigil, 4 Argenport Cinia, 4 Common Cause, 4 Emblem of Kodosh, 4 Emblem of Makar, and 4 Seed of Vengeance. The market consists of a Blood Letter, Cast into Shadow, Resounding Shockwave, Vanquish, and Wind Conjuring. So yeah, the deck pretty much is an aggressive deck. You want to, honestly, I encourage you straight up to just always redraw your first hand if you don't have an Outcast Elite on it. The deck is night and day difference when you have an Outcast Elite on turn 2 and when you don't. So at the very least, I can understand you not wanting to go to 6, but I highly encourage you to redraw at least once if you don't happen it in your opening hand. If you have 2 in your opening hand, like, oh my gosh, you just feel like you're on cloud 9.
That's true. Yeah, the Elite is really like the engine of this deck from what I've seen.
Yep. Yeah, it's super powerful. Bisma I'm a little lower on, but she is powerful. Tranquil Scholar is a little awkward because of the timing, because you want to play it first, but then Bisma kind of wants you to play it second. Like, it's awkward. So I went down there. I did end up putting 3 Seek Power. I don't know if the list that's been floating around runs Vara's favor Seek Power, but I did because the deck really wants to get up to 4, honestly. And sometimes getting stuck on 3 is a little awkward because you can't do 2 things for once. And getting at 4 lets you play Fearless Crescendo as well as whatever card you grab from the market. So that's a little...
You've also got the double justice requirements much earlier. I mean, I guess Zelia might be powered out a little early, right? Maybe even on
she comes up. Yeah, she consistently, I get her out on turn 4 as well. And that's why I have the common causes to just kind of help clean up your undepleted power and get both. So
okay,
yeah, the deck works out pretty well. Most of the time you do want to get your double justice, considering that Zelia is your only double shadow, but she actually is kind of good. Overall, she's just a bit of a removal spell. She draws removal, and sometimes they're not expecting her right now. And the curse she plays is quite relevant. Like, it makes her a beater. It does really good against the mirror match because the -2 to attack negates a lot of the unseen. It doesn't kill them, but it negates them attacking. For example, Unseen Commando as well as Tranquil Scholar. So that's something to consider. I do like the tech. This is a straight Argenport version. I've been experimenting with the Corendon version that runs Machinations as well. Still haven't locked it in. You can only run either or, though. The Zelia kind of fits that slot. So you're either running Zelia or Machinations right now.
That makes sense.
Yeah. The market is pretty much the only flex slot I think right now in the market is probably Resounding Shockwave. And that's a testament to the Flyers deck, right? Because it's a 1 power stun all their Flyers, which helps you win the race. Wind Conjuring is absolutely busted. It's typically the one I grab the most. Occasionally I will grab Vanquish to get, like, for example, the Spit Flame Dragon, or to kill a Grodov Stranger. But that's what you also have Cast in the Shadow for. And then Bloodletter is probably the next biggest one I go get, just because if you get one of your units with Unblockable or Aegis, putting the Bloodletter on them changes the combat math as well, or the race math. So, but yeah, overall it is a high roll deck. There's sometimes where the deck just stumbles, and there's sometimes where the deck can snatch a victory out of nowhere, and there's sometimes where you just smash your opponent because you high roll 2, 3, 4 drop, and yeah. So
decks like this are so good for ladder
Yeah.
quick games, nice and fast, whether you're going to win or lose usually on with decks like this. This looks like a solid build. I like it.
And thanks. Shout out to Dub Mike and some of the other players that have built it. I think the Boxer was playing it on ladder as well, I believe. Yeah, Alex, this is probably the new aggressive deck for Expedition. I think we have to set aside the Onis for a little while and switch over to the Ninjas.
Yeah.
It's cheap, and I know you have the Shiftstone for it. So actually, the Shiftstone cost for this one, including the Zelia, is 3,100 or 31,000. So if you take out the Zelia, in fact, let me do that right now just to get you guys. Oh, I can't do it. I don't have it saved. All right, fair. So what's that? That's minus 3,000 or 6,000
ish, right?
Yeah.
What are they, like 2,800 each, something like that?
I think it's 32.
Are they 32? Okay.
So it's about
that sounds right.
So about 25,000 Shiftstone for this deck if you guys want to run it. And there's a couple of flex slots too. So, yep. All right, guys. Of course, you can catch this deck on Eternal Warcry, and I'll put the link in the show notes down below. But that's going to do it. So with that leads us to our closing statements. Alex, you have anything for anyone?
No.
All right.
Just see you guys in the chat and in Discord.
John?
Yeah, come hang out. I keep promising my quarterly draft stream. It's coming up, y'all. I promise. Twitch.tv/Johnholio.
Sweet. And you can catch
a Call of Duty. What was that? A Call of Duty stream?
I mean, these people aren't trying to watch me play Call of Duty. I'll probably do that at some point too,
I was trying to troll you there. You didn't
No, I'll be at the bottom of a 5,000 person directory when I do that one.
He'll do both. He'll have like a window with Eternal and then be playing, and then in between kills he's playing a game.
That's what I do IRL. Like, that's what I'm actually doing. Like when I'm playing any of these games and there's downtime, just taking a turn or two on my gauntlet on my other monitor,
Fair. All right, guys. Well, you can catch the three of us at twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ, where we do a lot of drafting, do some cube drafting, all that other good stuff. So hang out, say hi, tell us what's up. We'd like to see you guys. And if you can't, you can catch all this great content, including the video version of this podcast on YouTube. Eternal Journey on YouTube. Throw a subscribe, a like, all that good stuff. Really appreciate it. But that's going to do it, guys. So until next time, as always, happy gaming.
Bye.
Good luck in your draft queues, everyone, and stay safe out there.
True that.